It's great to have you here on the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. If you haven't already, I hope you'll subscribe to or follow this podcast wherever you listen or watch. And I also want to thank you so much for all the wonderful reviews that you've left on Apple Podcasts. You know, that's what helps us reach others because nobody knows who to trust anymore. And so word of mouth really does matter. And I appreciate that very much. All right, this is not going to be a guilt trip, what I'm about to talk about, but we got to have a conversation about how much it actually costs if you run out there and buy a new vehicle. And the daily cost difference between vehicles is absolutely stunning. And later, I saw an interesting chart about what life expectancies are in the United States versus other countries compared to the health spending per capita. Let me tell you, we are not very efficient. We're not getting bang for the buck. Wait till you hear the numbers. So speaking of numbers, my goodness. Okay, AAA tracks every year what it costs to own a new vehicle. And new vehicle pricing has been coming down, but the overall cost of ownership is up and now has crossed an incredible threshold according to the latest annual survey from AAA. All right, ready? The average cost of buying a new vehicle, is over $1,000 a month for the actual total in cost per month. Over $12,000 a year, over $1,000 out of your budget every month. I mean, is there any doubt or wonder why most people buy used vehicles? And why the average age of a vehicle on the roads in the United States is the oldest it's ever been. One measurement says about 12 and a half years. Another says a whisker over 14 years, depending on how it's measured. But you get the trend is pretty clear. And so we're talking about that decision to buy a new vehicle, or LEASE, a new vehicle, because it's hard for me. I don't like to cuss on this podcast. When you get that new vehicle, you're thinking, and the dealers know, payment buyer. You know, people tend to go to a dealer, finance at the dealer, and the only thing they're buying into is what's it going to cost per month for the payment, lease, whatever. Here's the thing. That's only a portion of the puzzle. Because when you buy a new vehicle, depreciation is your enemy. Now, depreciation was in suspended animation for a couple of years during the COVID cycle when there were these extreme shortages of both new and used vehicles. Used vehicles went up. I told the story on the podcast about selling a used vehicle a couple of years in for significantly more than I had paid for the vehicle new. And that was an unusual cycle in history. So now we're getting back into a normal cycle. And so you've got the huge cost of depreciation. Auto insurance is way up in cost for a number of factors I discussed recently on the podcast. The loan cost is up. And by the way, I was stunned in the stats, not from AAA, but I read elsewhere, that the effective cost and interest rate for a vehicle purchase now is not as much higher as it would seem it would have been from the run-up in interest rates. But still, that's higher too. So now we're over this grand. So AAA did something else. They took what is the cost of ownership per mile when you buy a new vehicle for the first 5 years. Okay, if you buy a full-size pickup, it's $1.10 a mile. Every mile you drive costs you $1.10. On the other hand, you buy something, what today is considered to be small, like a Toyota Corolla as an example, or a Honda Civic, or the American makers don't make a lot of passenger vehicles anymore, so I'm giving those two examples. The cost per mile is 59 cents, almost half the cost, because the full-size pickups cost so much, and then they cost so much to run per mile. The gasoline's a lot higher, all of that. And so let me pick on the full-size pickup truck just for a minute. When you have one for work and you need it for work as a work truck and you're carrying stuff all the time, makes sense. On the other hand, a lot of people buy a brand new full-size pickup truck, and they're beautiful inside now, for a ton of money, and they never haul anything in the back. Or maybe once a year they haul something in the back. And then every mile you're driving, you're paying $1.10. Now listen to this shocker. Second most expensive vehicle per mile to drive is what I drive, an electric vehicle. Today you buy one, it's 85 cents a mile. Every mile you drive for the next 5 years, even though the energy cost is a fraction, the maintenance costs almost nothing. It's because electric vehicles historically have been much more expensive to buy than the equivalent gas. In the future, that's not going to be true. It already is not true in a lot of cases. And as I mentioned a while back, used electric vehicles are the steal of the marketplace right now. New, not so much. But the point is, and there are a variety of vehicles. Oh, this is a comparison. I better not forget to say this. Hybrids, which are really hot in the market again, second cheapest vehicle per mile to have on the road, 66 cents. I mean, it's fantastic. And think about that. The hybrid is 66 cents a mile. That's purchase, insurance, everything. Interest on the loan. 66 cents, the electric vehicle, 85. So if it's about money, it's really important you understand buying a new vehicle in the first place is so expensive. And second, what type of new vehicle you buy makes a big difference as well.
All right. I'm shocked by that electric car thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, electric cars, think about, how, what is it? Pioneers get slaughtered, so settlers get rich. We're about to move into the cycle where electric vehicles are going to be a much smarter financial purchase. But you think about your Tesla Model Y that you got 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. Today, a new one costs 40% less than what you paid for yours.
Really? I got mine I got like the first price.
Yeah, and now they're 37.
Oh, well, it's a different, yeah.
Yeah, it's model. A whole different era.
And different model, like that's the rear wheel drive, right?
It's got good range, all that. I mean, this is a new era for electric because the batteries have gotten so much cheaper, which is the component that drove the electric vehicle so expensive.
All right. Greg in Illinois wrote in with this. Are there any controls on HOA property management companies regarding what they charge for paid assessment and disclosure letters? It wasn't that long ago that the charge used to be $100. I just sold a condo and their fee was $375 plus a $100 rush fee.
Wait. $375 for the assessment letter?
It just seems like they can charge anything they want and you have no recourse to challenge any of their ridiculous fees. Is there anything I can do the next time I sell a property?
Greg, that is beyond outrageous. I wonder if the board of the association has any idea that this is a rip-off fee that the management company that handles management of the condo association is charging. Historically, when you needed one of these letters, depending on the management company, the letters were free because it's like one button push on the computer to generate that letter. Most often they were $25 junk fee. I've heard of late these $100 charges. I have not heard from anybody anything like $375. I mean, this is bank kind of practice. I mean, that's just crazy. I know you're on your way out, but I think a note to the president of the condo association would be in order, because someday it'll be that president who's selling and is going to get hit with this junk fee as well. That is beyond measure. And I don't know if states having any, there may be some state, but I don't know of any that have any regulation on what this kind of thing should cost. And it's not a marketplace thing, because you can't say, well, I don't want your letter. I'll go somewhere else and get the letter cheaper. I mean, you're in a monopoly situation that's obviously abusive.
Kristen in California says, my husband and I are doing major renovations to the current square footage of our home in San Diego that was built in 1954.
Wait, you don't say in 1954. Say a mid-century charming property.
This includes getting new windows, doors, sewer lining, plumbing, electrical, wall and attic insulation, etc. We are not currently in a fire zone, but it's in the imminent future. In regard to home insurance, we have USAA. My grandfather and both in-laws served.
Well, thank you for their service to our great nation.
We would like to install building materials now that insurers recommend or require for properties in fire zones. Where can I find this information? I'm not sure if contacting USAA would set off alarms to reevaluate our property, and I have not gotten much insight from window companies or neighbors.
All right, this is a wonderful question, because you never want to ask a company that sells building materials. And your insurer may or may not even, when you would call customers, should I call it, after the complaints we've had about USAA, can I say customer no service? I wouldn't do that either. And I would say, we're from the federal government, and we're here to help. Actually, in this case, FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, puts out a briefing that talks you through, for various building materials, what are the standards you look for greatest fire protection. And it's a simple guide, and I know this is weird, written easily, understandably about various building materials, because this is such a big issue in California and now in more states with the fire danger. And so that's why there's this very, very clear briefing that should guide you and what building materials to purchase.
So smart. Marcia in Florida says, we are now debt-free except a car loan. We owe $4,700 at $440 a month. I have $60,000 in savings, and I'm hoping to buy a small house in a year or so. In the meantime, where do I put my savings? Should I pay off the car now?
So I don't know what your car loan interest rate is, Marcia, but you're talking about you're going to buy a home in a year or so. You're paying payments that being like, I guess you have 11 more payments or something like that. You could easily, if your interest rate on your car loan exceeds 5%, which is what you can earn right now in savings, you could just go ahead and take, $4,700 from your $60,000, and then each month replenish it by adding that $440 that you're used to paying back into your savings. So then you'll be debt-free, and you'll have replenished the savings and still be building it. So your debt ratios will be just fantastic. And by the way, Marcia, if you're not earning on your money and savings somewhere in the 4s, which seems to be pretty easy to get right now, or potentially stretch, there are some still paying in the 5s on savings, you're missing an opportunity. And so you want to grab that and get additional interest on your savings. If your vehicle loan, though, is an older one and the interest rate on it is pretty low, down 4% or so, then just keep paying as agreed. And I could get into something else about, how the loan interest is calculated in the vehicle loan. And if I go down that path, the most important thing that makes it worth it to pay off the loan if it has a higher interest rate is that the interest is calculated, as it'll say in your loan documents, as simple interest. If it is a simple interest loan and the interest rate is higher, a slam dunk for you to pay off that vehicle loan. I want to go back to the interest thing for just a second. There are a number of lawsuits right now against stock brokerages. If you have money, cash, sitting in a stock brokerage, these lawsuits are alleging that organizations, the biggest, the most known of them is Charles Schwab, violated fiduciary duty by putting people's savings or leftover cash into ultra low interest rates. And so I was in my Schwab account the other day, and when you sign in, it's got this big thing saying, hey, earn over 5% on your idle cash with Schwab simply by moving your money into our Schwab money market. So the marketplace is aware there's a real financial risk for having cheated people on their savings. Common in banks, they don't have that same fiduciary level of responsibility that brokerages do. But wherever you have your idle cash, make sure you're earning the best interest rate in the market instead of a piddly interest rate. Coming up ahead, I want to talk about getting piddly benefits for big spending on health care. Houston, we got a problem. But this isn't about NASA. Man. So I'm going to talk about something I've talked about from time to time in the past. Gotten some blowback from people saying that I'm only giving part of the story. So I'll give both angles. But I saw a new chart showing, from Visual Capitalist, showing what we spend on healthcare in the United States per person versus other countries, and then lifespans of those countries. For example, Japan, the average lifespan, 84 plus years. They spend about $5,000 per person on health care. In the United States, at the other extreme of developed countries, we spend almost $13,000, an unlucky $13,000 per person per year on health care, and we live 77 years. In fact, of developed countries, we are the only one that lifespan is not in the 80s and is in the 70s. Everybody else spends half or less what we do on health care per person, except for Germany, which spends 2/3 of what we do, but still has a lifespan almost 4 years longer for the average person. Okay, so what's the other side that I got the Clark stinks about? That whenever I rail on our spending versus results, it's said repeatedly that, well, Americans have very unhealthy lifestyles. Americans eat a lot of bad for them food and all that. Have you ever seen what a German eats? I mean, come on. How did Germans live almost 4 years longer than us with how they eat? They make us look, in many cases, like we're health food nuts. And on that subject, many Americans are now health food nuts. We have a lot of vegetarians, we have a lot of vegans, and a lot of people that are much more aware of what they're putting in their bodies than we used to have. Smoking is way down. And thank goodness, vaping among teens is way down from where it was 5 years ago. Oh, I'm so glad about that. And so this argument about lifestyle, it may be true in some of the countries that are doing so much better than us, but how about Canada that has all these problems with access to medical care because of socialized medicine? The average Canadian lives 4 years longer than us, and they spend exactly half of what we do per person. And so where is the problem? Why are we spending so much and having so little results? Okay, we have some structural problems. An extreme shortage of primary care healthcare providers. Extreme shortage. So a lot of times people aren't getting any care at all till something is way late in the game. We're having people tragically ending up very ill or dying because of the lack of primary care. And so when you think about, and every society has problems, this one's as clear as it could be. So where are the efforts we need to have to create more primary care doctors? And then let's go to the other extreme. What's going on with our hospitals? Our hospital system is in a bad way in the United States because we have these hospital systems by metro area that have created monopolies or shared monopolies. Do you know there are now, and these hospitals nominally are nonprofit, they avoid paying taxes, they retain earnings but don't pay taxes on them, and the CEOs now, it's very common in big cities that the top administrators of hospitals earn well past $10 million a year, in some cases many tens of millions of dollars a year, and we end up paying for it. We have extreme competition issues in the United States in medicine and complete distortions where somebody gets out of medical school and they're like, why would I go into primary care when I'm going to make this? If I go into specialty care, I'm going to make this times 5. So we have, we talk about how unaffordable health insurance is. This is the kind of thing we need to address. Health insurance is only a symptom of the problem. And we deserve better. We deserve better. And so this is one of those things that is 20% of our economy. Healthcare should be 10% of the economy. That 10% extra that healthcare is stealing from the productive capacity of the United States makes us all poorer than we would be and makes our industry less competitive with other countries because we don't have this act together. I'm tired of slogans about this, that, or the other involving healthcare and insurance and all that. It's time we get to the root causes in the United States and solve these problems. You have economics that are being blocked by efficiency that is not happening because of the power of these hospital systems. And we must address it. And I'm not running for office because who would vote for me? No one!
That's absolutely not true. Lori in California says, my son is going through a divorce. His soon-to-be ex-wife overdrew their joint bank account, and now he cannot open a checking or savings account because she owes several $1,000s to the bank.
The check system's curse.
Oof. Is there an online bank that he can get where he can get an account, or do you have a suggestion? Thanks for your help. I've listened to you for a couple of decades, and the advice you provide to the public is invaluable.
So first of all, Lori, I'm really sorry for your son and his estranged wife. It is not a fun time for anyone that she overdrew, now soon to be ex-wife, right? So estranged wife, overdrew the account, ruined the joint account, ruined the reputation financially of both of them. And the banks have a bad boy, bad girl list called check systems that he will now be on for 5 years. And so a lot of institutions won't even consider doing business with him till 2029. So what does he do in the interim? So number one, I want him to make sure there's no other joint accounts, any credit cards that are joint accounts, anything like that. He needs to separate himself financially from his estranged wife as much as possible. 2, it is a very common practice of many credit unions, not all, to have what's known as a fresh start program. That someone who is, banks generally don't do this, but many credit unions do with a fresh start. And they will offer your son a provisional checking account, like a probationary account. And he, as part of the Fresh Start program, will have to do everything right with that checking account for usually it's 6 to 18 months. And then he's out of the penalty box. And he's a normal checking account customer of that credit union. The second possibility is if he opens a brokerage account with with Fidelity or Schwab. With them, they have an account that mimics a checking account, and usually there is no check systems check. And I'm not aware, I've not heard from anybody I've suggested this to, that they have been turned away from Schwab or Fidelity from having a checking-like account as part of having an investment account. Fidelity is $1 to open an account. I don't know what the minimum is with Schwab, but $1 will get it done.
It used to be 10,000. I don't know if it's still
10,000 at Schwab?
I thought it was.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
I would
maybe
be
I'm wrong.
stunned if it's that big.
Okay.
I mean, Vanguard's 3.
I thought
Can't
for a
imagine
checking account, though.
Well, not the checking.
Like, I think to get a checking account,
Okay,
you have
so
to have.
well, the checking. So, all right, now we're getting in the weeds
I'm
here.
sorry. Did I?
No, that's okay. Schwab has both Schwab Bank and then they have Schwab Brokerage. And Schwab Brokerage has with it, as part of your investment account, you have to have a holding in it. Then you can have what historically has been called, I think it's still marketed as the Schwab One, which is a bank-like product. Then they have on the other side, they have Schwab Bank. Then that's a traditional bank account. And that one they may run check systems. I don't know.
Oh.
So you've got those two possibilities with Schwab, and it's very confusing to people, to regular customers just walking in trying to open something. But if you open just an investment account, you can have with it check writing and that sort of thing that Schwab clears not through Schwab Bank, but through a servicing bank, whatever it is. Usually it's Bank of New York Mellon or someone like that.
Okay, sorry.
Did we get way too far in the weeds?
Yeah, I feel like I really messed that up.
No, you did not. You did
Kaj
not.
in Michigan says, the check is in the mail. It gets worse. You have warned about checks being stolen, washed, altered, and deposited. But wait, checks were stolen from our church mailbox, incoming mail. The bad guys were able to deposit the checks unaltered, no change of payee, no change of dollar amount, and without endorsement into their own probably fraudulent accounts. This type of check fraud is very hard to detect. The payer sees that the check was deposited for the right amount. The donations that come to the church are unsolicited, so it will not know if a check is missing. Just another reason not to mail checks. And then I just want to follow up with this next question. I know we want to talk about that, but this is kind of related.
Okay.
Brian in Florida says, I help a small nonprofit organization with their technology. Clark says that writing checks is risky. I agree that they're antiquated technology, but using credit cards costs businesses between 2 and 4% of transactions, whereas checks cost 0%. I've surveyed payment platforms, and they all seem to charge at least this amount, even to nonprofits. I know Clark cares about expenses, and he cares about the community. Can you give any recommendations?
All right, Brian, I'm going to answer your question second. I'm going to go back to the first one. This is just terrible with the checks having been processed, no change of payee, no change of amounts. That's very unusual for theft of checks. Any customer who noticed this, the receiving bank is the one that's supposed to absorb the loss because they did not verify the payee. They didn't do any of those things. So this is something that the writers of the checks should dispute with their bank, because the problem, as you said, they don't know in a timely basis. So we're getting back to the 60 days. But there's no way for them to know that the check was passed by a check thief. The fact that the payee was never changed, the receiving bank never verified identity, that the person had the right to pretend to be the church, means the risk is borne by the recipient bank. And I'd like you to encourage people who did deposit checks in the donation box where the checks were stolen to dispute the checks with their bank. I mean, that's what they should do, because then the potential is they haven't actually lost any money. It's the church that's lost money. They may then be able to get that money back in the hands of the church at no additional cost. This is something we're hearing so many things, one after another, after another, after another, wrinkles going on because the banks have not secured the check writing system. And criminals go where the weak spots are, and that's why the amount of check fraud has gone up many times over, even as the number of checks being written in the United States has gone down, down, down. The crime has exploded. So that brings me to you, Brian. There's too many risks for the donors to the nonprofits writing checks. And if somebody's check gets stolen and their money is taken, do you think they're ever going to still donate to that charity again? For now, it's worth the charity absorbing the processing costs for credit cards, because historically people are more generous with donations when they're paying with a credit card because it doesn't feel like real money. And it's better to have 98 to 96 cents on a dollar versus 0 cents on a dollar never donated. That's number one. Number two, we're getting closer to where there's going to be discriminatory fees, meaning that a donor can donate money with some kind of electronic link, and these are going to become more and more common with FedNow coming in place and all that, where they will be able to send money that will cost them nothing. It will be secure, and the charity will receive 100 cents on the dollar. So we're moving closer to that. We're not there yet. So in the meantime, I think this is the, what is it? Good is the enemy of perfect. Perfect's the enemy of the good. I think it's better for the charity to get the 96 to 98 cents on the dollar and just get that money into the charitable organization. Because for now, Visa, MasterCard are an ugly cartel harming the American people, and it's just an interim time till we have other ways to get this stuff done safely and efficiently. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And I know you heard negative from me. You heard negative from me about healthcare. You heard negative from me just then about the Visa, MasterCard cartel, about the banks, what they do to people when they are innocent victims of a spouse and all that. And so I know there are always problems in the country and capitalism, whatever, but there's so many good things going on. There's so much great stuff that happens. And the things that are not working well, we just have to have the desire and stick-to-itiveness to make them better. You don't make things better all at once, but you do it one step at a time. And so I am an incurable optimist, and things that don't work well, we have a great chance to make them work better over time. As far as what we're about, it's simple, about you. I want you to learn ways to save more, spend less, and don't let anyone ever rip you off.